Hi, I'm Arthur. And in the grand scheme of all the Warhammer games and settings, I find the hardest thing for people to get into is, oddly enough, AOS. Because no one truly knows where to start. Do you start with the insanely large backlog of content that is Warhammer Fantasy? Or do you start with the Realmgate Wars, which are technically the first running series of books that came out to coincide with the launch of Warhammer Age of Sigmar 1st edition? Which, admittedly, it is a bit of a slog being about 12 books in length, and only half of them are audiobooks, and pretty much all of them, from what I've seen so far, is just constant battles. Then you could also make reference to the army books, or the battle tomes as they were called in Age of Sigmar, the rule books that have come out along the way that would give you snippets of understanding to where the settings is right now. But considering we are now 3 editions deep, it might not be as easy as it could be for, say, Warhammer 40k. You could look at Warhammer 40k and immediately understand what its deal is, but when you see the bright golden men attacking weird orcs that are emaciated with weird trolls, you can't exactly tell why they're fighting, only that one is probably not a good guy and one of them is probably a good guy. So, I'm making this video to provide people who are interested in the setting of Age of Sigmar a basic rundown of what you should probably know if you want to engage in the lore of AOS. So, to start off, the early days of the setting are kind of topsy-turvy. I won't go too in-depth with what happened with the world that was, aka the world of Warhammer Fantasy, because it was blown up in a massive explosion of magic, chaos, and every character you know and love being killed in the most embarrassing way you could possibly imagine. The magic and force of the explosion and destruction ended up releasing so much pent-up magical energy that these energies ended up swirling into small realms. These planes began to take more and more shape over hundreds of thousands of years, creating the 8 mortal realms as we know them now. Think of them as super planets, essentially. They are worlds so vast and unending that they might as well be a whole universe, but it's still just earth and soil in terms of what it is as a planet. I think it's actually established that it's just a flat Earth style scenario or just a world without end, so who knows. I could be wrong. I'm still doing my research into it. Each of the 8 mortal planes created were based around the original 8 winds of magic, so each plane had a bit of a theme to it. These themes were often pretty easy to determine at first glance. Just a quick glance down of the 8 realms, you have Azir, the realm of heavens, you have Akshi, the realm of fire, you have Shaiish, the realm of death, you have Gairin, the realm of life, Gur, the realm of beasts, Hish, the realm of light, and its companion realm, Ulgu, the realm of shadow, and Shaman, the realm of metal. Each of these having a very distinct appearance and layout. Like Azir has very temperamental weather. You have Gur, which is a bunch of dusty plains filled with roaming giant beasts, and Shaman, which has a ludicrous amount of precious metals distributed throughout its soil, so on and so forth. At the end of the world that was, and before the true creation of the mortal realms, there was a period where there was not much. There was a void where legendary magical creatures could roam, godlike monsters and whatnot, but it was devoid of most mortal life. While the fledgling mortal realms began to grow and take shape, in this time, the god Sigmar, who was desperately clinging on to the last piece of the mortal world that was where he came from, was launched deep into this void. Symbolically, it took the form of a twin-tailed comet. The comet containing Sigmar, and the last piece of his home, was spotted by a fucking dragon god, Dracothian, who in a selfless act actually helped slow down the comet and let Sigmar find purchase to land and no longer be a fucking ball of fire in the middle of a silent nothingness. Thus, with his landing and using the shards of the world that was to form the core of the main portion of the realm of Azir where Sigmar wished to stay, the Age of Myth began, where Sigmar and his new super dragon best friend went on what I could only assume is the coolest buddy cop movie to ever exist in history. Basically, to sum it up, in as short a period of time as possible, Sigmar and Dracothian went from realm to realm and sowed the seeds of what would become mortal civilization, giving the new people of these realms the tools to advance their society and civilization at a ludicrous speed. Thatch huts became sprawling castles in what felt like a few short years. Sigmar ended up recruiting under his wing a bunch of other gods from both the world that was and the new world that was forming, where new gods were just appearing from ex-members of who used to be alive in the world that was. The dwarf gods ended up working with him. Gorka Morka, the two-headed orc god, ended up supporting them, and all was well for a while. For what follows the Age of Myth is something kinda bad if you ask me, and pretty much anybody else who was participating in it. Basically, the gods of chaos were still around to some degree, of which in this setting, by the way, there are 5 gods of chaos. The normal 4 we all know and love, and the Great Horned Rat, god of the scape. The gods saw the humans, elves, and dwarves, or at least what they were renamed to, slowly creating these prosperous civilizations, and decided they wanted in. So what do? Implant whispers. Small ideas, encouraging people with bad tendencies to do even worse. It took many years for any of this to bear fruit, but eventually, people started to act upon the whispers in their dreams. Violence, madness, and horror would pretty swiftly occur once the levee broke, if you catch my drift. Each of the realms began to be plagued with chaos incursions from the different gods. Every single god had specific worlds that they wanted to plunder that would make sense, you know, the realm of beasts and the realm of fire, because of their brutal and savage combat-obsessed nature, were besieged by Khorne. Shaman, realm of magic and metal, was besieged by Tzeentch. Ghyrin was besieged by Nurgle, and so on and so forth. Oddly enough, there were 2 realms that weren't really affected as much by chaos, and that was Azir, that only had minor corruption happen, likely because Sigmar would kill anything that came within, spitting distance, and Ulgu, the realm of shadow, where, due to some illusion magic bullshit by the god that occupied that realm, which was just Malekith doing Malekith things, the majority of the chaos forces that attempted to enter the realm ended up losing hold on reality. The only thing that got in was the Skaven, because they can kind of rip through reality and find little cracks and crevices to hide. This is the end of the Age of Myth and the beginning of the Age of Chaos. The Age of Chaos is an age of permanent fucking war. TLDR, shit was fucked for hundreds of years, and the only people attempting to do anything to survive was Sigmar and the other gods. But that was not pushing chaos back. In all honesty, it just ended up holding them off for a little while longer before being overwhelmed. Sigmar is a walking apocalypse with the hammer Galmaraz, so he was able to single-handedly win most battles, but because he could only be in one place at one time, 12 other battles would be lost while he was focusing on one. He would try his damnedest to push chaos back, but chaos was becoming wise to what was going on, unleashing their greatest champions in order to enact a scheme both nefarious and cunning in equal breaths. During one of the larger wars, where Sigmar was casting Galmaraz at his enemies like lightning bolts, one of the champions of chaos ended up creating an illusion. This illusion made it look like there was a champion of chaos in one spot, but in fact it was a portal to the endless nothingness between realms. So Sigmar, whoopsie, lost a magical relic that was so fucking powerful it could end entire worlds given enough time. And after this, Sigmar promptly fucked off to Azir and closed all the gates to it. The other gods, took offense to being left high and dry without any notice as to why Sigmar had to leave, so they took it a bit personally, and decided to do kind of the same thing with varying degrees of success. Azir was perfectly defended, but every other plane was already kind of invaded on. But surprisingly, Sigmar wasn't just hiding, he was in Azir, planning a new form of attack. See, he realized that the way he had been going, he couldn't fight the way he had in the world that was. He had to find a new strategy. Fight on the level of the gods and their champions, and thus working with Grungni, one of the only gods that still felt he owed Sigmar from past deeds, he created living weapons. These weapons were people after hundreds of years in the Age of Chaos who died or were about to die in acts of pure heroism. Now, they were divided, depending on the type of act and what they did beforehand, into smaller groups, but we'll cover that in another video. They would be blasted to atoms before their moment to final death with lightning, and their souls would be brought to Azir and reforged using the power of the lightning of Azir as well as the divine essence of Sigmar himself. Think about it the same way you would as a Chaos follower getting the powers of Chaos, being wrought in metal found only in Azir from the remnants of the world that was Sigmarite. These individuals, cast in the lightning of Azir, would begin to rise, more or less immortal and with almost supernaturally tough armor. The Stormcast Eternals were born, Sigmar's weapon to take back the realms. After hundreds of years creating thousands of Stormcast, he vowed he was done and opened the gates of Azir to teleport his men using what power he had left to the various mortal realms that had all but lost themselves to the forces of chaos. Their goal? To kick every single misshapen-looking ass from here to the ends of the earth until there are no asses left to kick. Oh, and also to reclaim the realm gates, the portals that linked the realms together, and to retake the realms as a whole. Thus began the Age of Sigmar, and thus began the Realm Gate Wars, which were one of the most important starting points for the Age of Sigmar. And that's about everything you need to know to understand where everything started. You don't need to know about Warhammer Fantasy, as it's very long-winded and a bit tough to parse, but you don't need to know about anything in particular other than that it existed. There are a few interesting bits in the current setting that I'll cover in a later date, like how Slaanesh is currently imprisoned in a demi-realm between the realms of light and shadow. I think the lore of Age of Sigmar is hard to digest, but if you have a simple and clear breakdown, it is easy to kind of put everything together, you know? And I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the Age of Myth, the Age of Chaos, and the Age of Sigmar. Let me know what you want me to cover next about AOS in the comment section below. It's because I'm looking for suggestions. I kind of want to cover some more AOS content because I'm really digging the setting, and I know that some of you might not like that, but hey, I think you'll really enjoy it, so I say give it a shot. Thanks to my channel members for supporting me, and thanks again for watching. Till next time.